Good morning. I would like to welcome you, newcomer or member, live streamer, or here in the sanctuary, to All Souls, a Unitarian Universalist congregation, a beloved community. Community has changed my life. I stand here this morning not just as one person, but instead the product of many people who have poured their time, energy, and resources into my development and becoming. I am confident that without community, I would not be the person I am today. The sharing in and being a part of community has taught me valuable lessons about the interconnectivity of life, that we are not meant to journey alone. Community has taught me about the spaciousness of healing, that our paths are not linear, that we need cheerleaders and mentors, peers, to remind us of who we are and what we are capable of. Community has shown me how to actively engage in resistance as a spiritual practice. For when we gather, share our stories, and lift each other up, we are resisting systems of oppression, capitalism, and white supremacy that feed on isolation. One of the most beautiful facets of community is that connection is not only created through shared experiences, but also through our unique differences. Audre Lorde once said, "Without community, there is no liberation." But community must not mean a shedding of our differences, nor the pathetic pretenses that these differences do not exist. Growing up in a conservative church, I was taught to hide who I was. I was not celebrated nor honored for my differences, and certainly not quirks, but instead isolated to the belief that the only thing that made me valuable was a God that condemned my very being. What Audre Lorde offers through these words is a different perspective, that freedom is emboldened by the richness of diversity in experience or thought, and that this richness creates a vibrant sense of community and therefore liberation. The tapestry of community that is created by diverse beauty invites us to reimagine connection, that we don't have to think and do the same things, or even that we are freed by the same ideals. Community is a call to action, a space at the table for all to bring our full, authentic self. I think you could all agree that that's a very Unitarian Universalist belief. Throughout time, many communities, and communities often pushed to the margins, such as the Black community and the LGBTQ community, have continued to nurture spaces where liberation is a team sport, creating space for the intersectionality of a multitude of experiences. Without community, there is no liberation, a truth that continues to call us to a deeper understanding of existence. So I began this morning by saying that community has changed my life, and I'd love to share a little bit more about what that means for me. One community that has deeply impacted my sense of self is the queer community, where I've found meaningful connection and been invited to be the best, most authentic version of myself. So I don't know if this will come as a shock to you or not, but I'm queer. And there was a point in time where I could not see a world where my understanding of self and spirituality could coexist. As I mentioned, I was raised in a tradition that is famously anti-LGBTQ. The primary theological teachings of fundamentalism finds their footing in the peril of humanity, that we are sinful, wrong, and unworthy of love. This teaching taught me to deeply fear myself, especially as I began to wonder about who I was. Maybe I'm gay. I remember one instance in particular, out of fear, writing in the margin of my chemistry notebook, "I will not be gay," in hopes that this mantra would somehow magically turn me straight and thereby be acceptable to the God of my upbringing. And out of fear, I stuffed the thought of my own queerness deep down into myself and tried my best to blend in. While I was wrestling with my sense of spirituality and sexuality, I also began to discern a call to ministry, which led me to divinity school. When I arrived at orientation on a very hot, very stuffy North Carolina day, I was shocked. I was surrounded by gay people who wanted to be pastors. Okay, not all of them, but I was surrounded by a lot of queer and spiritual people. That moment was the first time in my life where queerness and spirituality were not only connected, but shared space in community, challenging the notion that I was excluded by religion and spirituality because of my sexuality. Rather, it reflected the highest of divinity, love. You see, the queer community I made in grad school holds a special place in my heart as my first real understanding of what it means to be held by community. This group of people bore witness to my joys and sorrows, celebrated with me when I turned away from fear and came out, listened when I inevitably lost my first love, shared of their time and resources, and invited me to understand and integrate a spirituality and a sense of self that welcomed all of me. And in return, I offer the space for them to do the same. This is what community does. Through the ebb and flow of life, it liberates us from a place of isolation to see the world as a place of collaboration and connection. For my first queer community and the queer communities that followed, my NYC gay kickball community, who I see some of you out here today, and the greater LGBTQ community, I give great thanks. You showed me life's abundance exists beyond fear, giving me the space to reauthor wrong beliefs and connect the beauty and abundance of both my queerness and spirituality. The poem "You See This" by Octavia Butler that Julie so beautifully read earlier in the service breathes life into the understanding of what community is, further illustrating how community helps us to understand interconnectivity, the spaciousness of healing, and resistance more clearly. Octavia says, "You see this. This is what is in you, what makes you you, what connects you. You are more than flesh and bone, more than blood and sinew, more than tendon and cartilage. You are forever. You are everything, everywhere, all at once." Community is interconnectivity, that you and I and we are everything, everywhere, all at once. When we can pivot to see the inherent worth and dignity in all people and prioritize we over I, we are able to look into the eyes of another, see someone who needs food or shelter, sit in the same pew as another, engage with the bodega employee, and see ourselves reflected. For the interconnectivity of community teaches us that we need each other, that we are never meant to journey alone. When we look at communities, particularly marginalized communities that oppose structures and institutions of white supremacy and capitalism, we see an increase in the reliance on community. The anxious attachments that institutions have created between humankind and survival is challenged by the secure attachment community offers to humankind. To experience sickness, mental health challenges, grief and loss or trial is to be human. Where society and institutions say, oh well, good luck, the interconnectivity of community says you are not alone and I have your back. Octavia continues to write, you are seed, you are universe, you are power, you are the soul of the constellations. You are time without end. Institutions of power often evangelize a linear way of existence. This is particularly true when it comes to healing. As human beings, the healing process, either emotional or physical, is something we all experience and will experience frequently throughout our lifetime. I bet if I were to ask each of you in this room, you would also acknowledge that your own personal and collective healing is not linear, and very rarely it is. I wonder if instead healing can look more like a spiral, a labyrinth of experience that leads us out and back and out and back again. Community offers spaciousness of healing that doesn't require linear movement. Instead, much like the constellations that Octavia writes about, community allows us to freely exist and allow our healing to take shape in whatever form it needs to be. Community is our peers, family, chosen or by blood, friends, mentors, teachers, and guides, reminding us of who we are and what we are capable of. A healing balm that will never expire. Octavia wraps up her poem by saying, you are change. God is change. You are God. If and when you forget this, look to the heavens, see your destiny to take root among the stars. Another common human experience is to forget. All of us experience losing sight of who we are and where we are headed. But as Octavia Butler says, when we forget, look to the heavens, see your destiny, and take root among the stars. If I may have the liberty, community is the heavens in this sense. It reminds us of who we are. It allows us to see our destiny and take root among each other, existing in connection with one another. To be among community is to be among the stars, to be one of many, to be held in mystery, and thereby resist the false hope of isolation. This way of being is an act of resistance in a culture and society that seeks to divide us. To gather in community, such as we do on Sunday mornings, we are partaking in resistance. For when we gather as a community, we say no more to exclusion and isolation, division, hatred, and loneliness. Instead, we offer a space to share and listen to each other, thereby creating more compassion and empathy, spaciousness and healing and abundance in our lives. I think we could all agree that we could use more of that. This is a spiritual practice a practice of returning home to one another and acknowledging the wholeness and intricate masterpiece of each of us. As a progressive Unitarian Universalist congregation, how can we continue to be a community where our members and newcomers are able to say, All Souls is a community that changed my life? Now, I believe that there are many different ways to tackle this question, and I hold the belief that it is imperative that we are committed to building community where not only all are welcomed, but affirmed in their identity and in their experiences. I believe we have a call to remain united in the face of institutions of power that marginalize, divide, and exclude and harm our fellow kin. We are interconnected beings in the plight of all people, BIPOC people, LGBTQ people, folks with disabilities, gender minorities, people that are in a lower socioeconomic class, fat people, people who experience mental health challenges, all deserve the spaciousness to not only be heard, but have their existence honored, cherished, and celebrated. As a queer woman, finding other queer community to share in life's joys and challenges and everything in between has quite literally saved my life. As I shared, I once thought that I had to choose my queerness or my sense of spirituality. Community has challenged that and shown me a different way. A world where I can exist beyond the fear that mainstream society tries to keep us all tethered to. Through the abundance of community, we are able to see a world that flourishes beyond scarcity, because through community, there is more than enough space for all of us. A teaching that makes room for me to stand in this pulpit today. Communities often use different mediums to express themselves. A way I feel that I and my community uses to express themselves is poetry. To conclude our time together today, I wrote a poem about how I experience and see community. May this be an invitation to find, grow, or create more community in the world around us. The beauty and abundance of community is tied together by threads of connection, creating a tapestry that reflects an image far greater than ourselves. Just as waves lap against the shore, faithfully ebbing and flowing, community returns us all to a place of inner knowing, reminding us that finding our grounding is held in the warm embrace of the woven interconnectivity of all humanity. There is no one person without the rest of the world, for we share in each other's pains and joys, celebration, heartache, turmoil, and happiness. An act of resistance, a spiritual practice, a safe place to call home. Community. Amen.